Okay, John, so why is it important that we learn our scales and chords?
That is a great question. People ask this question all the time. What is the real benefit of learning theory? And this is where the rubber meets the road, because theory can be dry. But unless it actually helps us play better, you know, a lot of people wonder, well, what really is the benefit? But it actually does help us play better. Just like when we learn vocabulary words, when we're learning a language, maybe when you were first learning to read, you read see, spot, run. But as you got more advanced, you'd start to add more complex words like histrionic, or you know, you'd see the word cogent, and then you'd start to understand what that means, so that you could understand more and more complex you know, writings and books. Well, it's the same thing at the instrument. As you become more advanced, you'll start to realize that there are more and more chords and scales that are embedded within the music itself. There's really no note that's an island unto itself. It's part of a larger structure. Just like if I wrote these series of letters. All right, these just look like a bunch of random letters. But once you start realizing, by grouping letters together so that they form words, they start not only being more recognizable, but much easier to remember. If I had asked you at first to give me a recounting of just the random letters that were up there, it would have been almost impossible. But now that we've grouped them into actual words, you could recite this right back to me within just a couple of seconds of looking at it, and you would have had it memorized. Well, it's the same thing with our music. When we start to recognize that in our music, we oftentimes have patterns that are embedded inside the music, we start reading not individual letters or individual notes, but instead grouping them together to form words or chords in this instance. For example, this is a broken C major chord. You know this from the study that we've done already. Here's your C, here's your E, and your G. Of course, this is a broken chord. So regardless of whether the chord is over top, the notes are over top of each other, as in this instance, or broken, as in this instance, it's still a C major chord. It's C, E, G. So when you see that structure, instead of reading each individual note, like you would be reading each individual L-E-T-T-E-R-L-I-K-E-T-H-I-S, group those notes together so that they form structures or patterns. And that's where we come up with the concept of cogent playing patterns.
Oh.
So you're starting to read your music according to the grouping of notes instead, again, of individual letters themselves.
Okay.
Now, that was a concept that you know, maybe other teachers teach, but certainly the coining of this concept into cogent playing patterns is my own, and as you asked earlier if it was. So this is what I want us to start focusing on now in our music. As we continue looking through the music, start looking for the patterns within your music. Look for the scales that we've discussed, the chords that we've studied, whether they be you know, augmented or diminished chords. It makes the argument as to why we study our major and minor scales, the continual different types of chords that we'll learn in the future, even the inverted chords. Remember, where we've got one chord, for example, C major chord, and we've taken the C off the bottom and now we put it on the top. Well, even in that instance, it's recognizable as a C major chord. It is inverted, but that's why it's important to understand even the iterations of the chords in their inverted form as well.